Our next award that I'd like to introduce this morning is the Angioletta Coradini Mid-Career Award. This award is given annually to a mid-career scientist for broad, lasting accomplishments related to our fields of interest. Angioletta Coradini, who lived from 1946 to 2011, was an Italian planetary scientist who inspired astronomers and planetary scientists around the world. She received the 2012 NASA Distinguished Public Service Medal and has craters on both Vesta and Pluto named after her. The 2023 Angioletta Coradini Mid-Career Award is given to Dr. Brett Denevi. Dr. Denevi is a planetary geologist at the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab, specializing in studies of the moon, Mercury, and asteroids. She received her BA in Geological Sciences from Northwestern University and her PhD in Geology and Geophysics from the University of Hawaii. She's an expert on the origin, composition, and evolution of planetary surfaces, focusing on volcanoes and crust formation on terrestrial bodies, the mineralogy and chemistry of planetary surfaces, and space weathering effects on airless bodies. Dr. Denevi has been involved in NASA mission and instrument teams at all phases and in all roles, including Deputy PI of LROC, Deputy Instrument Scientist of the Mercury Dual Imaging System, participating scientist of Dawn and Kauai of ShadowCam on the Korean Pathfinder lunar orbiter that we heard about yesterday. She's worked on laboratory and in-flight calibration of multiple flight instruments and is experienced in operations planning and targeting. Dr. Denevi also served on the steering committee for the Planetary Science and Astrobiology Decadal Survey as vice chair for the panel on the moon and Mercury, which has such important influence on what we are all going to be doing in the next decade, that assessed key scientific questions in planetary science and astrobiology, identified priority, medium, and large class missions and other initiatives, and presented a comprehensive research strategy lasting until the year 2032. In 2014, asteroid 9026 Denevi was named in her honor. Her contributions have been recognized by the Maryland Academy of Science Outstanding Young Scientist Award, a NASA Early Career Fellowship, and 7 NASA Group Achievement Awards. I want to add on a personal note that I recently watched the episode of Nova, I think it was entitled Return to the Moon, where she was prominently featured. I didn't know this ahead of time, and made complex concepts that we all work on together easy to understand, and very effectively sharing these with the public with the same kind of enthusiasm we all feel about the moon. So nice job, Brett, on that, as well as everything else. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Brett Denevi.
All right, thank you so much. I'm really honored to join any club that includes Tim, Jen, Barb, Harry, Carolyn, and Angioletta, of course. I got to see a bit of her legacy on the Dawn mission, so I'm really honored today. I'm also thinking too about, mid-career and being forced to admit that I am now mid-career. And yeah, I think like small cracks of midlife crisis had been opening, and then the pandemic just, threw that wide open, where sitting trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my life? What am I doing with my time? Am I making the right choices? So I think this is a good time to kind of reflect on all of that. And I thought about in terms of mid-career advice, because early career people get all kinds of advice. I don't know if it is helpful, all of it necessarily, but I don't think there's always a lot of advice for mid-career people, where you've kind of gotten to a certain point by doing what you've done, and now what's next? And I don't know the answers. So I asked all of the people who I know who are much smarter than me for their advice and tried to kind of reflect and summarize that. Most of the advice basically fell into two very clear categories. So the first one was basically just say no to things. And so you might be thinking, wow, old people are grumpy. And that's true. But also, I think there's an important aspect to just realizing your own limitations. You know, you get so many opportunities, and one of the things that you do in early career is say yes to everything. And then at some point that branches out into this unmanageable tree that you need to start kind of pruning back to useful levels that are manageable and that we can actually realistically accomplish. And one of my friends put this in a way that I thought was helpful. This isn't about all of the things we have to do to be considerate and helpful colleagues, all of the, kind of tedious work that is part of any job, but it's about, the things that you feel like you should do because it's a good opportunity. But it's okay to say no because that also creates opportunities for other people. And so for those of us who have big problems saying no, I think that's a helpful way to frame it, at least for me. And this is a sign that is taped to my computer, courtesy of Jessica Sunshine. So I am still trying to learn this. I have not yet succeeded. And one of the things I was doing is looking back through my time cards. APL has this great way to visualize how you're spending your time. And so this is my time for the last year. These are in 2-week increments. I think it's all normalized to 80 hours per pay period. And it was very easy to see where I was not happy. And it is all these times when your time is spread so thin because you have not managed to say no. And you want to be helpful, but at some point you're not. You're just creating this big mess for yourself that you can't quite manage. This was also really helpful to see, all right, I can see where I was happy. And there's like these nice little chunks of time where I was able to really put everything into one main project. And I won't tell you what all these charge codes mean because they're all great projects, but that one was my favorite in the last year. The other kind of flip side of this then comes on from that is really like saying yes. What are you going to say yes to? And so these were the other things that I kind of summarized that people had given me. It's very kind of easy to say, do what you love to do. We don't always have the opportunities, but when we do, that's great. But first, we need to figure out what we love to do. And so that is, there are so many amazing things out there, and what makes each one of us really kind of grab on and want to do this is different. And that's what makes this community so amazing. So trying to figure out what really is important to you, I think that it takes me a while to figure that out anyway. I also liked thinking about this. One person put it, all right, pretend you, for whatever reason, can only work part-time. Your time is so constrained, you have to narrow it down to one project or maybe two. How would you pick that? What would be important to you? And then you don't have to wait for people to ask. I think once you figure out what you want to do, you can start to try and work to make that happen. And as long as you're intentional about what you are working to make happen, then I think that is a big part of it. And then as you're doing that, I think figuring out that things don't have to be done the way they were done before is a nice realization that only occasionally comes to me. Oh, I don't have to run the meeting that way. I could do it a different way. And I think that's such a big part of what makes our community good. You know, when I started in undergrad, I wanted to be a physicist. And when I looked around at who my colleagues would be, I very rapidly switched majors. And this field, you know, has been, it's small enough that it does feel, you know, like a community, and it's welcoming. And I'm looking at Carly in the back, who I remember my very first talk. I think I kind of blacked out during it. I have no memory of the talk itself. I was so nervous, but she asked a very kind question afterward. And those are things that really matter to people when they're starting out and trying to make their way in this really great community. So figuring out what I like to do. This is a timeline I put together for another talk. That's the other secret to mid-career. You only make like one good talk, and then you just pull slides from that. But this is a timeline of, you know, lunar exploration. The gray lines are flyby, orbit, impactors. The blue lines are each landed missions, and then the red are crewed exploration. And so for me, I didn't get to experience all of this great time back, the heyday of lunar exploration. But it was still an inspiration to me. And if you'll indulge me in putting my own personal kind of bookends of my timeline on this chart, I was born in like the doldrums of lunar exploration. And I graduated with my PhD in 2007. Those three lines that are in the middle there, that's Clementine, Lunar Prospector, and Smart One. And for me, they might as well have been also ancient history. I mean, I think it's like anything that's before you started grad school is ancient history. Anything that you were at LPSC to see the talk about, you know, that is very recent. At least that's how it feels to me. So once it's already kind of established canon of Clementine Lunar Prospector, I was really inspired by trying to piece together all of those bits of history. And it kind of, that's the thing I love about science, is going through all of that history, that community where you can reference all the way back to, you know, Gene Shoemaker, to Coradini, to Wargo, to all of these amazing, great people. And we get to carry on little bits and pieces of their work. And I always assumed that my career would be kind of continuing on with this historical data sets and finding new ways to rearrange the puzzle pieces, hopefully look at things in a slightly different way. And then the fact that now all of a sudden we have all of these new puzzle pieces, new pictures, new ways to look at it, feels like an incredible treat to get to look at the science questions in new ways. And the fact that all of that is to come, that we are getting to experience, that really feels pretty lucky and pretty special. So I guess why my science that I love is the fact that we get to look back in time. We get to try to see, be a little, you know, the fly on the wall, imagine the moon forming, evolving, seeing those impact basins, trying to figure out when they formed, in what order, how they affected the solar system, what conditions brought that all together. And the fact that we have this moon that keeps these records that are totally lost, most of them on Earth, feels like, you know, a true stroke of luck. So I will end there. Thank you.